our transaction cards don't really look that impressive, and we should certainly change this. To change this, let's consider how a single transaction might look like here. So we have our app here, and up there we have the chart, and down there we have our list of transactions. Now, how should a single transaction look like? Now, obviously, there are dozens of ways of building this and structuring this. But one possible way I could come up with is that for each transaction, we maybe have the price here in a box on the left, almost like an image. So our price would be in here, obviously not a dollar sign, but the concrete amount. Then next to it, we might have the title, maybe in a fat, bold text. And below that, smaller, and maybe like light grayish, we have the date. Not too complex, but should be pretty helpful. Now, how could we build this, however? How do we build this thing here, this container? Well, the surrounding piece here, that can probably stay a card. We might want that slight drop shadow here. We can even increase that with the help of the elevation argument. Inside of that card, and that's really how you should think about building user interfaces in Flutter. What's inside of that card? You might say we have 3 elements in there, and that's correct, but what's actually happening in there? Well, actually, we have 2 main elements here sit next to each other. We have 2 items here next to each other. So that here should actually be a row in there so that we have 2 items next to each other. Because there is no other way of positioning 3 items like this in Flutter other than with a row. And in that row, we then have this first item here, which could just be a container. So let me note this here. That thing here, the purple thing, that's a row. Then this thing here might be a container. And then, last but not least, I'm running out of colors here. Last but not least, if I take that rose color here, last but not least, that thing here, so title and date, that of course is another column in there, right? It's a column inside of our row because we have 2 items above each other. Columns are not just there to position items on the overall page, but also inside of other widgets. Columns do nothing else than take 2 or more widgets and position them above each other. No matter how much vertical space there is. Here it's almost no vertical space, but still items above each other means a column. Items next to each other, like here, means a row. That is how you should think about building user interfaces in Flutter. And that's what I want to build together with you now. We will build this transaction card together with rows, containers, and columns, and text, and so on. So back in code, let's build this. We have our card, and as we just saw when I sketched this, inside that card, we need a row because we want to have 2 items next to each other. So let's replace the text here with a row. And now the row, just as the column, takes children, 2 or more widgets, which are now placed next to each other. And that's the difference to the column, of course. Their items are placed on top of each other or above each other. Now in that row, we wanted to have that first item, which we said could be a container, that holds the price. So here, why don't we add a child, which is our text, which is tx.price, and therefore not price, tx.amount, and therefore the amount of our transaction. And here I'm getting an error because that's a double, but text actually expects a string here. So we need to convert the double to a string, and we do this by calling toString there. On every double, you can call toString. On every number, you can call toString. Actually, on every object in Dart, you can call toString to get a string version of it. Of course, for some objects, that makes more sense, like doubles or numbers in general. And for other objects, like your own transaction, toString might just give you some unusable output. Here, however, we'll get the number as a string, which is really useful. And therefore, we already have that container. Now, next to that container in our row here, I want to have that column here. So that column where we can have the title on top and below that, the date. So let's use column. And then here, again, we might have 2 texts. So we have the text for the title. And then we can copy that to also have the text for the date. Now, date is of type datetime, which also is not a string, But we can use toString here to convert this to a string and see what that gives us. Let's save that and see what we get. Okay, the rough layout is there. Obviously super ugly, but we'll get there. We see the price, we see the title, and below the title, we see the date. The date, of course, is not nicely formatted. It's not human readable, but we will change that.